Hello, everyone. I'm Elaine Cercado. I'm a director of POWERinU Philippines, and I welcome you to today's complimentary webinar, One CEO is Not Enough. Welcome to the Age of Empowerment. This complimentary webinar is brought to you by POWERinU. POWERinU is a training, coaching, and consulting company with office in the Philippines, and we've been offering free webinars regularly for more than 2 years now, since January 2019. Our mission is to partner with organizations to enable them to deliver strong business results by enhancing their talent and leadership through value-adding strategic consulting solutions. And so I'd like now to introduce our speaker. His name is Jeremy Blain. Jeremy is the Chief Executive of PerformanceWorks International, or PWI, a company that helps organizations, executive boards, leaders, and teams succeed in the digital climate amidst disruption, opportunity, and uncertainty. Jeremy combines leadership know-how as an international CEO and executive board officer in the UK and Asia, with his experience as a learning and human capital professional of over 20 years. Jeremy commands extensive experience as a transformation leader and advisor at the board level globally. He has operated on an international basis to launch successful businesses and to turn underperformance into excellence. This has included a 7-year as CEO for an international consultancy company based in Singapore, operating from India to the Pacific. Jeremy is a regular media commentator and has received coverage in numerous high-profile publications including Forbes, CEO Today, Dialogue by Duke CE, Business Matters, HRM, HR Online, and more. Jeremy was also recognized for the second year in a row by his industry peers and customers, being named International Game Changer of the Year for 2019, 2020, and for the first time ever, a third consecutive time in 2021 in the ACQ5 Global Awards for his work in digital transformation, HR transformation, and workforce transformation. Jeremy has recently launched the book, The Inner CEO, Unleashing Leaders, rather, at all levels. So I wanted to show my copy, which Jeremy gave. I'm so happy with this. And of course, it's still one of my favorite. I'm still reading the whole book, Jeremy, and it's one of my favorite books, of course. For now, I'm
Of
still
course it
digesting.
is.
I'm still digesting everything. And of course, I'm very, very honored to have Jeremy. But let me finish about the book. It's now an international #1 best-selling book. And in tonight's webinar, he will be calling for a new age of empowerment across our organizations, whether it be multinationals, large, medium, small, micro business. So, everyone, let us welcome our speaker, a very good friend for a very long time, Mr. Jeremy Blain.
Oh, and thank you very much for having me, Elaine, the POWERinU team. I am so delighted to be here again. We've had a few of these, but this one's a very special one because it comes on the back of a few years of research, the publication of this new book, and something that I believe is very pertinent for today's workplace, which is bringing in a new age of empowerment. So during the presentation today, I will also be inviting you to take part in polls. And those of you that may have used Slido before, all you need to do is go to slido.com and put in that hashtag code that you see at the bottom of the screen. And you will be able to take part in all of the polls that I do. It's very, very simple. You can do it on your smartphone, or those of you on a laptop or desktop, you can do it through there as well. My assertion is that one CEO is not enough. If you think about 2020, where 18 months ago, we entered a world where transformation of business, be it digital or workforce, was the preoccupation of many. This was before the pandemic hit. And then we've had 18 months of challenge in all parts of the world around this. But if we consider and take a step back, just what is hitting our organizations and our leaders, then I believe that we have an ultimate opportunity now to finally realize something that we've been talking about for a long, long time, which is leadership at all levels and unlocking that potential within our people. If I move on, one thing that I believe around that is driven by this really, is that there are 5 key things which I call the perfect storm, which are hitting organizations and mainly executive leaders right now. These 5 forces in their own right are tough to manage. So you consider those of you going through it in your organizations, digital transformation, adopting digitalization. What does that mean? How do we do it? How do we bring the people along with us? And how do we actually execute it, which is the key? Because you probably know, according to Forbes and IBM, that digital transformations up until 2020 had failed 84% of the times. That's because the implementation wasn't there. And the third element within these forces also was a key question, which I'll come to. The second, though, is organization culture shift. We have seen a huge decade of transformation hitting our organizations. So again, considering digital, the way the workforce is shifting, the move right now to hybrid working and the hybrid office, and many question marks in what that looks like. But as we modernize our organizations, also our culture needs to evolve and it needs to adapt to include the new values that are important to the business and to our people and to our leaders and to our management. The third force is what I call the emperor's new clothes, which is leadership readiness. I often say that some leaders that I work with, they can talk the talk, but walking the talk is something very, very different. We're at an age at the moment where the capability gap between employees and our most senior leaders, when we consider the new skills of today, digital skills, collaboration, working and communicating online, digital selling, mastering the virtual cell, all of these things. All of these are new skills which are being fueled by the evolution of the modern workplace. And it means that actually everybody has to catch up. And there is a responsibility for our leaders to unlearn perhaps some of the traditional practices from the 20th century and adopt the new knowledge, skills, and behaviors, which will help them modernize themselves and their organization and lead into the future. The fourth and fifth are quite related really, and relate to the second around culture. Future of workforce and ways of working. We're seeing the rise of the blended workforce, independent workers and permanent workers working together. We're seeing flexible working, part-time working. We'll see hybrid working. These things are challenging current HR structures, and potentially the way that our current frameworks in human capital management are set up perhaps are not fit for purpose. We need a new approach for a new era, for a gig era, the inclusion of independent workers with permanent workforce and the value that they bring. And that then goes to ways of working, workplaces, workspaces, digital versus non-digital working. Wow, you know, we're all in the middle of it. And the fifth, which is broadening diversity lenses. We have seen many examples of organizations making gains in this and making progress in this when we talk about the inclusion factor, neurodiversity being understood better now and understood what value it can bring to organizations. But we still have a long way to go in parts of the world with gender diversity, race, culture, and so on. However, I must say that there is a sixth force, which was the pandemic, of course, and that has started to break down some of these barriers and move us a little bit forward. So I decided to do a little bit of a study behind this to see, well, what is the readiness level and what do employees, leaders want and need when they move out of this? So we asked leaders in a survey that I did called the Enlightened Leaders, you know, do you believe that you're ready for the future? Almost 7 out of 10 said, yes, we believe we're ready. So we asked the employees the same question, and it won't surprise you to hear that less agreed with that. It said 40% are, because actually they cited some very specific things, these new skills, behaviors that are needed. There is a huge rise in human-centered leadership, purpose-driven leadership and community-centered leadership, which many traditional organizations are missing at the moment. And these are the skills that a lot of the younger workforce are valuing, but also choosing in terms of the organizations that they are attracted to, but also want to stay within, interestingly enough. What this starts to impact when organizations are getting it wrong, and we saw a lot of this happening in the pandemic, is that it starts to chip away at confidence, engagement, attractiveness, loyalty. So some big human-centered measures within our organizations. So when we talk that a little bit further, you look at other surveys out there, and according to DDI, you've probably seen surveys like this before. Almost 60% of employees cite the reason for leaving is not the company, not the way it's working, but I'm leaving my bosses. It's my managers, it's the leaders. They're not doing the right thing. Employees are far more discerning now in what they are choosing. And as we go forward, when we look to actually the other side, the current high-performing companies, then there is a huge respect for the executive leadership, which is driving a strong sense of purpose at all levels, but a strong confidence in where the organization's going. And this is the difference between those leaders that have thrived during the pandemic and those that haven't so much. So we asked all of these surveys set, the leaders and the employees, what are the traits that are most important moving forward so that we can collectively contribute to the business health? And interestingly enough, the top 3 insights that we got were all human-centered, and the common one was all about an empowering environment and culture. That linked to things like empathy, relationship building, more personalized communication. These are not the hard technical skills. These are the human skills which are rising to the top as the most important traits that are for any organization anywhere moving forward. Ultimately, it's the human capital, not the digital, that's going to make the difference. We looked at some of the keywords that have been flying around LinkedIn over the course of this year so far, and you can see these are many that we're seeing coming out now. These are within the top 20 keywords that are being used within LinkedIn at the moment. So a strong sense of collaboration, leadership development, empowering others. So I've got a question for you now. So I'd like to invite you to go to Slido. So open this in your smartphones, either snip a picture, take a picture of the QR code, join at slido.com and type in that code. Once you've typed in the code, answer this question for me. In reality, how many organizations really do truly empower leaders at all levels? So take your time. And please cast your vote. Thank you. The vote's coming in now. So very few so far for those of you that are driving the vote. So keep them coming. I'll give you another 20 seconds or so to get on for those of you that haven't and to take some votes. You'll see the votes coming in on the screen or on your smartphone as they go. Excellent. So, so far we're leading at 6%, 18% a close second, 11 a close third, a little bit like a horse race this. I'm going to give you another 10 seconds to place your votes. In fact, a few more of you need to place your votes on this. So I'll give you a few more seconds to do this. Okay, so almost half of you, in fact, feeling that it is a very rare commodity, which is very interesting. So you can stop making your votes now. Thank you very much for those that took part. It is actually 18% of organizations which truly empower leaders at all levels. So a close second for those of you that were voting at that level, but that is less than a fifth of all organizations globally. And in some regions, it is, in fact, less than 10%. You're absolutely right. Some less enlightened regions, some very traditional regions, culturally driven regions. So it's pretty rare to see it, which starts to help me understand what this is all about. But let's first of all try and think about what we mean by empowerment moving forward. So I just want to spend some time in defining what I mean. So there are two senses of what I mean by empowerment when we talk about this. The first is this, which is stepping out. Stepping out destroys the myth that when we talk about empowerment, we mean doing more. We don't mean just doing more. Stepping out is being able to be empowered in your role to make certain decisions, to solve problems, to have ideas, to work with the team to drive things forward. So it's not about necessarily doing more, it's working smarter and doing it in a way where we're all taking ownership. However, where we have talent within the organization that believe has stretch, then that could be stepping up, going beyond our job description, contributing more strategically to the organization. And when they do, and when some of these organizations that you've just seen actually do have a chance to do that, then they clearly make gains. So I have another question for you on Slido. So you can reopen your app. So you just should be able to open your app and it will refresh this one for you now on the same app. According to the same research and including Harvard Business Review, Forbes and IBM, by how much did empowered organizations traditionally outperform traditionally led organizations over 2020? So this is during the pandemic. By how much? So keep those votes coming. So go on to slido.com again and type in the code. For those of you dialing in, the code is 574324. Keep those votes coming. So a strong belief already within our audience who is voting that empowerment can work when done right. Most of you so far, 70% of you so far, saying it's either somewhere between 20 and 25%. So keep those votes coming. So 20, that's it. We've got the votes coming in thick and fast now, which is great. Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, so you can stop voting now. The number is indeed 20%. Congratulations to you all. Yes. Now that is a huge amount. So if I could go to organizations and said, I can give you a way to outperform your competitors by 20%, what are they going to say? They're going to say, show me, because we've had a year where performance is really difficult to get. And here's one organization that has done it really well that I'd like to show you. So many of you might know who, if you're in Southeast Asia, you might know Four Fingers Crispy Chicken. Which was launched a few years ago. This was the CEO at the time, Steen Puggaard, and I interviewed him and talked about, you know, what did he try to do in an industry which often actually doesn't do this. It's very prescriptive. It is very prescriptive in not just how employees act, but actually what is served. We expect something when we go in and order this. Anyway, I was talking to him about it. I said, you know, what's the secret when you want your people to go beyond? And he said these three things. They have to have direction, of course. They have to have the tools, but also I have to repurpose my managers so that they focus less on supervision and performance management and actually growing our people to help them and give them the confidence to stand up. So I asked him at that point, I asked him, well, okay, so that's all very well, but do you have any tangible results? Because your industry is notorious for the turnover of staff. Now, the usual turnover in the fast food industry is somewhere between 70 and 75%, which is incredible. And this is what he told me. Well, he said, you know, in the first 3 years, we grew from 0 to 40 million in the US. I created what he called mini CEOs, he told me. But he said also, he said, the biggest measure of our success is that we weren't just comparing ourselves across Asia or Southeast Asia. He said, if you looked anywhere in the food industry, anywhere in the world, our attrition rate was less than anybody. And remember what I just said about what that was. It was less than 25% at Four Fingers Crispy Chicken. You know, and at the same time, he said, I was still the leader of the organization, but it gave me time to actually think about the future and plan ahead. And part of my discussion with my team is I'm going to give you this, you know, potential to do it, but, you know, you need to embrace it. And in his words, I don't want to be disappointed. And that's very Steen, if you know Steen. So it's very clear, therefore, that an empowered organization is high performing, but it's also attractive. it's attractive in that, in certainly Four Fingers Crispy Chicken, it started to attract the right kind of people, but it also retained people within the organization. So it's time to unleash that potential as far as I'm concerned. And it is a very common concept when we talk about leadership at all level, but it's quite an uncommon practice. But just read this quote. I think this is a lovely quote. Leadership, for those of you who are maybe dialing in, I'll read it. Leadership is about empowering others to achieve things they did not think is possible. There are two ways of spreading the light: to be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. The beauty of empowering others is that your own power is not diminished in the process. It comes from empowering others. And I love that metaphor about the mirror and the candle and the lights, because this is about it. It's not dimming our power as a leader, but it's helping others shine. And ultimately, we all succeed together. But I have one big problem with this quote. A huge problem with this quote. This quote was from 1902, nearly 120 years ago, coined by the novelist, the American novelist Edith Wharton. It tells you and it talks to me about leadership and empowering others and what it is all about. It talks about where we are in the modern workplace today. We have been talking about this topic, ladies and gentlemen, for almost 120 years, and we are still talking about it. And it is still an uncommon practice, as we can see from the polls that we've done. So I went out there, I said, there must be some great examples like Four Fingers Crispy Chicken of organizations getting it right, because, I can't believe that we're really not getting there. And there are some great examples. The best operators out there have found success in the eye of this perfect storm that I talked about. They are talking in this language here that you see on the left-hand side of the screen. The new normal is already there for them. They're not talking about what we need to prepare for the new normal. They're already there because they saw it coming. They understand that people, and particularly the young generation coming in, are far more capable at some of the new skills, new knowledge, new behaviors that you need to operate in a more digitalized world. And they're embracing that. They're practicing reverse mentoring. They're bringing Generation Z and millennials into the boardroom, and they're helping the leadership get through that. And it's starting to flatten perceptions, flattening structures. And in fact, it's transcending old ways of managing our people, from supervision, like Steen was talking about, to support and recognition. And what you see is the increase in productivity in all of these different areas, in mobilization, engagement, retention, growth. And there's a few things that are underpin that, but the biggest is digital, is that they found a way of using the most appropriate technologies to make sure people are connected, so that we can do this quickly, we can do it collaboratively, and we can do it clearly and well. And some of the organizations that are doing it well are here on the screen. I talked about Four Fingers Crispy Chicken. Some of the newer organizations like Spotify, but also some of the traditional organizations who are challenging themselves, like Nike and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, who found that by empowering their neurodiverse employees in very specific ways in their data centers, drove productivity and performance by over 30%. Incredible numbers that we all need a part of. And here's another traditional organization that was more enlightened in this level, which is Ping An, the insurance and banking giant in China. This was a really difficult change for them. They're transcending not just the ways that we work at corporate level, but they're thinking about how actually things need to change from a cultural level, transcending the socio-political culture of China and how we internationalize as a business. And they talked about, this was all about leaders, and it really challenged our leaders. So Jessica Tan, who's based in Singapore, actually, the co-CEO, talked about this when we were interviewing her, saying this was a rebuilding organization. It was from the ground up, and we had to take away a lot of management attitudes, and some didn't make it. She was very, very, very open with that. So at the very top, this wasn't about our people. This was about our leaders and our managers being fit for purpose for the way forward. And they recognized, even in an organization as traditional as this, that empowering employees to make more decisions and not always to refer to the managers gave them the competitive advantage of speed. Because one of the issues in their industry was that they would take weeks to, let's say, respond to a claim or respond to a roadside incident even, and get back and get the process going. They have now brought that down to minutes. But some of the dramatic results that they've seen, they've saved over 5,000 hours of management time and bureaucracy. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? What could you do with 5,000 hours if I gave it to you? And then they've repurposed their managers into coaches, much like we talked about before here as well, a real empowering spirit and supporting coaching. And they are, in her words, you know, catching people doing it right, whereas in the past, it was always about what people were doing wrong. So there's some great examples of this. But for me, you know, it really kind of starts to shape what an empowering culture looks like. So I have a question for you. If you go to Slido again, and that question is this: what one word would you say describes an empowered high performance organization? In other words, how does it feel? One word that describes it. Please pop it in here and let's see what we can create in a word cloud. Love that word freedom coming in. Creativity, confidence, trust. These are great words for an empowered organization. Keep them coming, please. Yes, agility. Now, this is really important, actually. Agility, we talk about agile and being, practicing agility, but, you know, speed of action and speed of efficiency and finding efficiency and new ways of working is becoming key. Being empowered helps us do that. The big one at the moment coming out of this group is trust. Absolutely. The bigger the word, the more important it is to this group that is answering and putting these in. Please keep those words coming in. Trust, it underpins through the whole organization. It starts to flatten it. We've seen even in traditional industries like fast food and legacy investment and banking and insurance, it can work, but also support. Another big word that is coming through this. Absolutely. I'd urge you, take a screen grab of this, everybody. Just print screen or take a snap with your smartphone. Absolutely right. And that is absolutely key, you know, and it's all about, you know, if you put all of these together, this starts to help you understand more about the culture of the organization. And that is the really key thing. It's the key about how does the culture adapt to unleash leaders at all levels and bring in a new age of empowerment. Well, they've done that at Spotify that I talked about before. And they talk about this within Spotify being absolutely critical from day one, being in the DNA, making it empowering. So aligning people strongly to it, but actually, you know, driving a bottom-up approach in terms of innovation, ideas, ownership is part of how they build and shape their culture, asking people to think big. And I love this quote that she says at the end, you know, the culture underpins everything for Spotify. And Johanna will tell you that this evolves over time, but she said sometimes it can get really messy. But they embrace that at Spotify, because she says right at the end of there, it's in the chaos where often the magic can happen. And I love that quote. Sometimes we need to kind of let go a little bit and just go down a roller coaster and feel the fear a little bit. But ultimately at the end of the ride, wow, that was an amazing ride. And look what we've done and look what we've achieved. So for me, the big question when I looked about all this, there were some few good examples out there of organizations doing it, but so many of organizations getting it wrong. So I started looking out, you know, where are all the books, the how-to manuals, where's all the advice behind this that's out there? And sure, there are articles written about empowerment and what that means in organizations. And there's some great data to the power of empowerment as well. But when I look for books on leadership at all levels, zero exist. And I mean zero exist. Yes, there are books on leadership, there are books on management, but they are really focused on C-level executive leadership, the traditional leadership journey. So for me, the real key was to think about, well, you know, surely something can be done in this area. And that is where I came in and felt I could do something about. So this is where I started my journey into the inner CEO, unleashing leaders at all levels. Finally, there is a book that talks about how you actually do this. And, you know, for me, it's been a really important journey because this also includes a lot of the research that I've done over the last 10 years around the future of work, around where management and leadership is going, the impact of digitalization to free up our people. For those of you with kids, particularly teenage kids, you've probably got kids like me who are already buying and selling online. They're already doing that internationally. They're learning the ropes. They're coming with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more kind of know-how and keenness to do things differently. And so we need to unleash that, but also harness that potential as we go along. So when I talk about what this is, I mean, I could take you through every chapter and so on, but I'm just going to show you a 90-second explainer, which will give you everything that you need to know. And then I'll just give you a few more tips and hints, and we can move forward into over to you and talking about some questions and having some discussion.
Are you ready for the challenges facing the modern workplace? Recent events have taught us the importance of transformation. Businesses now face a perfect storm of challenges. No business is too big to fail, and many are too slow to succeed. Our workforce is changing fast. We're entering a new age of empowerment, and everyone can contribute. The Inner CEO reveals how we can all play a part in making leading at all levels a reality. Written by Blain, an expert on business transformation and growth, it provides a roadmap to help everyone unleash their inner CEO and contribute beyond their job role, whatever their level. Traditionally, strategy has been owned by the few. Now it's time for the many to contribute. Leadership must come from a broader base. Everyone has the potential to step up and make things happen. It's a new model of collective and collaborative leadership which unleashes the power of people, enabled by appropriate technology and a supportive management structure. The book provides a roadmap for a bold new age of empowerment. Supported by a range of resources, the book provides a toolkit to help anyone unleash their inner CEO. Organisation health, development and growth is owned at all levels. Are you ready to unleash the inner CEO?
So that saves you having to listen to me go on about what's in the book. But, you know, what's really important is that I felt that the time is right for this. We've been talking about it, yes, for 120 years, and still we haven't been able to do it right. And now more than ever, with the perfect storm of factors, with us emerging from the pandemic, we have an opportunity to do something quite special in our organizations with our people, along with the journey, but also stepping out or stepping up beyond their job description to go a little bit further. So within my book, the real key for me was not to write an academic piece of work that talks about the theories behind this. I wanted to root this in what is happening now, the modern workplace and workforce context, why we need a more collective approach to leadership and what that actually means. And when I went into detail, it was very, very clear those organizations that had failed in the past at this were talking the talk about empowerment, and they were saying to people, go on, you take ownership for that, you can do it. But they were missing a key component. The organization level conditions and culture was not fit for purpose. So it soon failed, and that starts to disengage people. So I go into detail in the book at the two levels that we need to get right. And the first is organization. What is the structure? What are the conditions? What does the culture look like? What's the mindset shift at executive leadership and management level that fuels this? And only then can we move down to individual level, which then start to talk about them and how they can either step out or step up. And I've supported this with two levels of assessment to go with both of those. At organizational level, a look at the overall organization, say, okay, let's have a temperature check of whether our people are ready, whether they're willing, whether they're engaged on this journey. And down at individual level, an assessment called the 4 E's. That is part of the model that is in the book. which is all about making things happen. So it is envisioning, it is engaging, it is executing, and it is excelling at what we do. Those are the 4 E's. So within that, I've built a toolkit behind it. So most of the second half of the book is the how-to, and with templates and tools which can be used, including a 90-day roadmap, which not only actually provides a step-by-step process of what you might want to do as ideas, but supports that with appropriate learning and development and skills building along the way. But alongside that roadmap comes also clear week by week measurements. How do we measure this week by week so that we can start to measure this one by one and from day one as we move forward, rather than looking at the end? So we can start to look at what's working and start to press the accelerator level. If things aren't working, we can take a step back and start to look at organizational level and individual level. So if that interests you, I have, well, today there will be 3 lucky winners of a signed copy, but also a piece of news around this is that the ebook, the Kindle on Amazon, we have now put down to, just for a short period of time, to a price of $2.99, which is under half price at the moment. So if you have access to Kindle or an Amazon site, that's what you can buy it at now. And just released on audiobook across all platforms is the, this was just last week, actually, the audiobook. And you'll be glad to hear it wasn't me that did the voiceover for this. I actually recruited some professionals to get this done. I was not going to enter into this. I mean, honestly, I started reading the first couple of pages and I was a complete failure. And I thought, I've got 200 odd pages to do. There's no way I can do it. So I've got some amazing voice artists that have helped me do this and bring it alive. So there's some links here. You'll get a copy of this deck with the links in it following this event as well. And give it a listen, and you can reach out to the POWERinU team or to me directly, link with me on LinkedIn. Let's continue the conversation. But for now, I would love to say a big thank you for having me, for hearing me talk about and getting behind this sense that the time is right for an age of empowerment for our people. But also now I'm really happy to say that there is a way to do this at organizational individual level. It's time to unleash the inner CEO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Wow, what an enriching and empowering presentation. So thank you so much. And we are now opening the floor to questions. Feel free to type your questions in the Q&A chat box. We have actually been receiving a number of questions already. Keep it coming. In the meantime, there were some questions as well that were pre-sent during the registration, and we'll start with that. Trina, will you be presenting something? Otherwise, I will read off from the pre-sent questions. Jeremy, how do you keep good people from being pirated despite of a budgeted salary from the company?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. And it does remind me actually of the quote from Richard Branson, doesn't it? Which is, you know, well, what if I invest in all of this in training and development and my people leave? And his response to that is, what if I don't and they stay? You know, this is a duty of care to our employees. But the good news for organizations is that employees, particularly through the pandemic, have become more discerning in terms of the choices that they make. They're looking for the organizations that have demonstrated empathy, that have invested in their mental health and well-being, have invested in their skills so that they can become a remote worker, but also have started unleashing empowerment to them. And empowerment is a big part of this. You know, this is a key question that is being asked by new hires. You know, how empowering is the organization? How have you treated your staff and your people through the pandemic? So I think actually I possibly would have answered that question differently about a year, 18 months ago. But right now, I think it's good news because many organizations have learned from the pandemic within that. And these people who are not just being attracted to the organization, but are within it and experiencing that level, you know, the attrition level is declining. In fact, I talked about Spotify before, I was talking to another one of their human capital leaders, and they said they have experienced their lowest year ever of attrition within the organization. And when they went back to their pulse surveys, it wasn't about where we're going as a business, because there were still some issues about decisions that they'd made, like the Joe Rogan experience and so on, which many employees hadn't agreed with. What really made the difference were the human touches that the organization put in place for their employees during the pandemic, and that drove loyalty.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I guess in relation to that, we'll pick up something as well on a question, tips on how to maintain control and motivation of your people now that everyone is working from home. So I think very close to that, and everything that you've said in the last half an hour or so.
Empower them. Yes. Yeah, well, there's obviously empowerment is not the only thing. That is one, a strategy, but it's also a strong tactic for organizations that have started to shift their management mentality and structure. But you put that together with more human-centered leadership traits like greater empathy, greater courage at leadership level, more vulnerability shown by our senior leaders. These are the things that are the glue for the organization at the moment. But unleashing the power within our employees and allowing them to do more and have ideas is what's kind of driving the new game. So even in industries like the luxury industry, you think of Prada. Prada is a brilliant example, actually, because the idea that one shop assistant came up to, who was out of a job, who said, we can't go to our retail establishment, but why don't we do something online? Her idea that was taken up is, let's move. I don't know if you can see my shirt, but my logo is there where it usually is there. Yep. What they did, Prada, is they moved their logo here. And it changed the game for their tops. They focused on tops for 18 months and lounge pants and shorts. And they grew their sales by over 30%. And this was down to an individual. So suddenly everybody was in the same boat, even leaders. We all know leaders that struggled with the move to remote working.
Yeah, it's been a great equalizer, actually. If you think about it, everyone working from home, right? So, all right. I'll shift now to the ones that are sent directly to me. Let me just pick up as I get them. What would you say is the single biggest challenge for a leader in today's world, and what should a leader unlearn to be more effective? A couple of questions there.
Yes, well, the single biggest challenge from my perspective is how to navigate the future. When the future is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, it's ambiguous, and it's two more things. It's distributed and it's unpredictable. So I've added a VUCAD to this now. I've just invented a new word for you. But that is also another key reason why I'm championing empowerment as one of the solutions behind this, because if you can, and it doesn't have to be everybody in the organization, because not everybody wants to or is ready to step up or step out. But if enough people do it, if management are more focused on a growth mindset to support this and grow it, then suddenly there are much more people collectively taking control of some of these implementations, tactics, some of the actions that need to happen. And suddenly a leader is able to start to focus on what's important for the years ahead. So that is the one thing. But in order to do that, from a skill set perspective and the unlearning bit, responding to that question, it's actually, it is unlearning the 20th century, if that makes sense, because we are in the 21st century right now. It is about what are the new skills and traits that they need, which are harder skills, but also power skills. They're not soft skills anymore. Emotional intelligence is a core component. All these words that I used before, empathy, awareness, all of these things, it is fundamental to emotional intelligence. And I'm sure I've seen a few comments on that already around that. So it's understanding that, one, we need to modernize our organizations, and that's a huge challenge to do that, just with digital transformation. But then secondly, it's adopt a different mindset as a leader to be more human-centered, because that is the differentiator for leaders at the moment. Those are the most important traits and trends that have come from the enlightened leader research that I talked about before.
Mhm.
But also the other component, which I didn't talk about much, was the community center. So the best leaders right now in sort of a different answer to this question are becoming forces for good. They understand they have a responsibility to society, to the planet, to climate, all of these big macro issues that we have, inequality at macro level, you know, across the world, all of these things. If all leaders start to think more in line of purpose, people, profit, rather than shareholders and profit, then I think we'll be in a much better place. But this is absolutely at the heart of it.
Okay. Purpose, people, profit, in that order. And power skills. I like that. Power in you.
Let's stop talking about soft skills. I find it very frustrating when people say soft skills. They're not.
I agree. And I like the stepping in, stepping out, stepping up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
And you know what's it? Sorry, just one more point, because I've seen a few comments come in. I would say that within this digitalized era and modern workplace, the human touch is more important than it ever has been. So that's why those human skills at leadership level, I think, are critical.
That's right. And in fact, now there's a question on related to human touch. As a practitioner of EI, emotional intelligence, I'm trying to make the people I work with embrace progression over perfection, and often question the status quo. And it seems people are not ready. How can I slowly integrate failure tolerance to keep trying new things and to keep trying new things in a structured mindset within the organization?
Well, that's a really good question. And it plays to the point that I realized when I started writing my book, because funnily enough, when I started writing the book, I was thinking about individuals, and I was asking the same questions as that, actually. And I suddenly realized that I was missing a huge component, because I shouldn't even start that journey with the individuals before I've tackled the organizational level. So we need to understand, and it's a mindset shift. So the mindset shift at leadership level has to be right. Are they ready? It's not about our people being ready, actually. It's more about, is our leadership ready, and is our management, our line management ready to either practically or in theory or notionally flatten our structures and look at management of the business in a different way through an empowered organization and empowered working. So this starts to shift the culture of the organization. And only then, when people start to see that, you start to see that the big word in our word cloud before was trust. Without that trust at leadership level, it won't happen. So if leadership make that shift, what they can put this all on a platform is sort of psychological safety, as far as Dr. Amy Edmondson kind of coined the phrase. If that is in place as a solid foundation, then I think in relation to this question here, you can fail fast, fail often, fail early, and you can start to think of it more as versioning. This is version 1. We might get it wrong, but version 2 will get better. We'll learn from it. So agility of learning, speed to learning, and speed to performance is really key component of this. But the conditions have to be right first. And that's a big, big part of my book.
Okay, so it's really that starting from there, from the top, from the organization. All right. I'll go back to one question from the present, although there are many actually coming in from the chat box, either directly to me or sent to everyone. Let me just pick one. Is empowering your people enough for being an effective coach?
Hang on. Okay. Got it. Oh, that's a very interesting question. I know I don't think it's enough. I think it's a component of what it is. So, and empowering people isn't about being a coach either. It's about a different way of structuring our organization, and it's adopting more a growth mindset. So that growth mindset is part of that. We can grow our business through growing our people. Part of the tactics around that might be to greater empower them. That might be to step out even in their role within the team. You make some decisions, you move some things forward. But ultimately, actually, it will be that the skills that are more associated with coaching and support and growth of the individual, which will make the difference as a coach. So how the line management embrace that, how they provide direction for the individuals who are stepping up or stepping out, saying, okay, I'm ready to lead at my level, but I need some help. So it goes beyond coaching for the job description or the KPIs I have to hit. And the manager has to adopt a mindset that said, I have to balance the need to hit my targets in the operational role with the need to grow this individual and help them with leadership skills, with management skills, help them potentially on new projects they're driving forward, and help that kind of overall team and individual success. So I suspect it's a lot more individual components, but that is definitely one of them.
Yeah. And being if I can just add, Jeremy, being a certified coach myself, we coach the coachable to start with, right? Yeah. And of course, in the corporate world, if this is about the corporate world context, there's a balance, as you said, between coaching or asking and telling. So leading and managing. So
you're absolutely right. It's the triple whammy, isn't it? I think line managers at one level need to become leaders because they're going to be unleashed as well. Leaders, managers, and coaches, and getting that kind of combination at the right time is key. But I think it's much more in an empowered organization. It's much more about catching people doing it right and less about supervision, problem solving from a management perspective, and performance management.
And the growth mindset that you said, right?
Absolutely.
The growing them.
Carol Dweck's time has come for sure.
We just have another 7 minutes to go, and so we'll probably have time for 2 to 3 more questions, and also take the time to read the comments in the chat box. Very, very good comments coming here. One of the questions I got: what if empowerment is a vision of the top management, but managers are threatened by the succession plan?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's mindset, isn't it? It goes to this first point. So actually, I deal with this question within the book at organizational level through a series of questions. I call it the decisive dozen. A dozen questions that leaders and managers have to ask themselves. And these are not just kind of business questions. These are deep emotional questions about, am I ready for this? Because the other thing to have in mind is that we're also asking our line managers to step up or step out as well. So we're not just talking about individual contributors. We know that we have some great managers out there. Why shouldn't they step up and lead ideas, lead things through? So we can actually sponsor them, and it's their line managers and their leaders that will do that. So it's a much more collective and collaborative approach. And if that mindset is shifting alongside with that, then they embrace that possibility. But in fact, in the best empowered organizations, the conversation goes now, it doesn't really go into the career path in the traditional way that we talk about it. It talks about what you can do at your role, at your level. And it's starting to challenge many organizations that actually, that I interview in the book, but use as examples to challenge actually the way that they look at the development of their people and the structure of their organization away from old ways of doing career pathing and into actually, we can have a much flatter approach to how we all contribute to business health here, but all develop in our role and start to do more horizontal or diagonal moves rather than just kind of vertical moves. So it actually has the almost like the opposite effect of the intent of that question. It actually benefits the conversation.
And I like, I'll go back to what you said. Excellent quote from 1902. Be a candle or mirror, help other people shine. It comes by empowering others.
Edith wasn't wrong, was she?
No, she wasn't wrong. So you're absolutely correct. Though that was many a long time ago. Okay, I think I'm down to just probably 2 more questions that I can read here. How can employee lead up if that idea of empowerment is not a culture in the organization? I think something related to what you answered as well. How should employee respond to this?
It won't work. Simply put, because this is where my studies and examples, particularly in the book and some of the things that I've done outside of the book as well, have proved, is that there are very few examples of this working right, because there are very few examples of this working right. Across this 120 years. So if the culture, this is why the organizational level has to be looked at first. If that isn't in place, and in fact, there is a 4-box chart that I've invented for the book, which looks at exactly this question, sort of the level of empowerment versus the speed of progress of and transformation of the organization, and the dynamics between them, because this is where it comes from. And where employees are not getting, they were told, yes, you can be empowered, go and own that. But if they don't see the recognition, rewards, or the benefit of doing so, then they're starting to vote with their feet. They are far more discerning, as I talked about before, employees these days, and they have no hesitation in looking out at the organizations that are doing this or are trying to do this, and not necessarily big organizations. They're starting to look at small, medium enterprises. They're starting to have a lens of 2-year career paths with an organization. I don't need particularly to be promoted up here, but I want to learn, I want to thrive in a situation here, and then I want to try something new. So it's the challenges at organizational level. And if you try to empower people with that in place, it is doomed to failure more often than not. Okay. So you need to rapidly stop and rewind.
So that means as well, the culture really has to be there first, right? So one last question, and I only have probably a minute left, Jeremy, for this. Okay. A quick answer to what are the 3 most important traits of a CEO that will be vital in the survival of a company, especially during the pandemic?
Yes. Okay. So this absolutely links to a piece of research that I did earlier this year that I referred to, the Enlightened Leader. The number one coming back from employees in terms of the need for modern day leaders to demonstrate that they can bring people along with them is empathy. So it's that's at the heart of emotional intelligence. We know it's part of emotional intelligence, but it's absolutely there. The ability to collaborate and build relationships across levels is within the top 5 as well, within those traits. And that comes in at a strong number 2 across both. And the third one, as I said, common to both leaders' responses and to both employee responses, was a trait of being more empowering. And for me as an employee to become empowered and take more ownership. So that has suddenly become a trait which employees are looking for from their leaders. And everything that I've mentioned there is a human-centered trait. It's not about the business chops or the technical skills. Yes, they need the digital skills. They need to navigate the future. They need to do all of these kind of things, but it's the human-centered skills and the ability to engage and mobilize people in a more empowered way, which is making the difference.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Wow.
Pleasure.
Very, very,
Pleasure.
Very, very rich inputs and insights there. So there are a lot more that came in the comments. We'll download the chat and send together when we send the recording. And to that person who asked, yes, there will be a recording. It will be sent out. We'll try to ask Jeremy for the answers for those questions that we were not able to read, and also for those comments that we were not able to read. But I want to go now. Yes.
Sorry, Elaine, if I can just offer or volunteer myself for this. I'll go beyond that if you like. If you give me those questions that we've not answered, I'll do a piece to camera like this, and you can send it as a recording for everybody afterwards.
Oh, great. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jerry.
It's all right.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I want to now go into the winners. So, Trina, can you please show up who are the winners of our 3 books, signed books from Jeremy? We picked from those who ask questions. Yes, so we have a question from Ruby Manalak and Milot Osiones. And there was a question from the first one that I read, actually. And in fact, that person sent a number of questions. Sanjay Verma sent a number of questions. So we'll send those to you, Jeremy. Please email Trina at team@powerinU.com.ph with your full name, contact number, and complete address, so we can relay that to Jeremy, and he will then send the signed book of a #1 bestseller in Amazon. So thank you so much, and I will just proceed now to some closing announcements. We have a free virtual learning event that we will be having on August 25 and 26. The event is free, but registration is required. No recordings will be released for this one, so you make sure that you register and attend it. The world experienced the major disruption from the pandemic, as we have been discussing. And so leaders now have that golden chance to turn the crisis into opportunities for growth. Join us in that event and plug yourselves to enriching power sources that will offer you refreshing takes on how you can lead your organization to an energizing transformation. We have a powerful lineup of speakers, Jeremy Blain being one of them. You'll see him again in that full power, maximizing the power in your organization. And we have success story sharers and panelists who will give relevant and inspiring insights that can bring renewed energy to your organization. So sign up now. Next one, Trina. And yes, we'd like you to take just 10 seconds. Feel free to just take that QR code, or in fact, it should also be in the chat box. And please answer the 2 questions in our poll. We'd like to continuously improve. This is a service, the complimentary webinar that we've been doing every month. We'd like to make sure that we bring to you relevant topics, excellent speakers, and of course, insights that will empower you. So, or bring out that power in you and your team and your organization. So that's all the time that we have. We went a couple of minutes over time, but again, we'd like to thank our distinguished speaker for tonight's webinar, Mr. Jeremy Blain. And thank you for even awarding that book, and of course, volunteering to answer those questions in a video like this. And so we'd like to end this now and invite you. We will blast to you the recording. So we'll invite you to the next month's webinar, which you will see in that announcement or blast that you will receive from POWERinU. So we'll see you in next month's webinar. For now, thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night. Yes. Good night, everybody.
And good afternoon for you, or good morning, Jeremy.
No, it's good afternoon now.
Good afternoon, Jeremy.
Yeah. I think we've all got something in common. We're all going to be eating now.
Yes.
Me with my lunch and you with your dinner.
All right. Yeah, we're seeing all the thank yous and a lot of good comments there.